Introducing the all-new BYD Sea Lion 7, the luxury electric SUV that's changing the game. Book your free test drive today at the BYD showroom in Sheffield.
Dr. Steelhammer, Vladimir Klitschko, and Dr. Iron Fist, Vitaly Klitschko, Shannon the Cannon Briggs, and Butterbean, Cruiserweight King Jai Opetaia.
Boxing King Media, powered by BYD. Dominic, Ingle, Dom, he actually wearing the exact same clothes, sat in the exact same spot he was for the last one that we did for Eubank Jr, Ben. So
do you know what? Do you know why that is?
You've not moved from that spot.
I ain't changed them. I ain't even washed them.
Not washed.
Times are rough. Can't even afford to wash my clothes. You know, now I'm not a top-rated boxing trainer with no fighters. It's times are hard and friends are few, as they say.
There you go. So you just sit in the same spot in the
same
gym.
spot, yeah.
In
fact, I'm living in the gym.
Yeah, times that bad.
Times are that bad.
Because I was just thinking, if you look at the thumbnail from the previous one, it literally it's in the same spot, sat the same way.
Well, you know, like you do see people. It's like my kids. They're like get attached to certain clothes. It's like I was sure this is and Johnny will tell you the same thing. Johnny Nelson had a pair of trainers. They were from Asics. He must have worn them for 10 years until they were actually hanging off his feet. Another fighter called the Fridge Baker. We used to have a T-shirt, Brendan's Boys, and he had one. It was probably a blooming quadruple XL because he's massive. And he wore that until it got about 10 holes in it, hanging off him. He used to train. That's my favourite shirt to train in. So they get attached to these kind of things, don't they?
Dave Allen's got a jumper, like a pink jumper that's got holes in it.
Yeah.
And he wears it.
Wears it time and time again.
Yeah, I think the funniest thing he told me was because the T-shirt, that jumper's lasted longer than some of his ex-girlfriends.
Probably longer than his career.
Yeah. Well, it would, because if he's had it for 10, 15 years, who's going to box for 10, 15 years? But, But yeah, well, he's fighting next week as well. So
is it Johnny Fisher he's fighting?
He is the big rematch, so we'll chat about it. In fact, I tell you, we'll just jump in and start straight with that. The big rematch, he got it over the line. We did see that he did put a bit of weight back on, but he was confident he's going to lose it all. And this is his World Cup final. Does he beat Johnny Fisher in that rematch?
Well, who knows? You just don't know. Dave Allen's, like I've always said, Dave Allen's always had the boxing ability. You know, to be a lot better than he was. I think he's just his own self-discipline letting him down. So, you know, he's one of my favourite phrases for Dave is his inconsistency is consistent. That's what he is. So you never know who's going to turn up, and you know
he's consistently inconsistent.
Well, his inconsistency is consistent. You could say it whichever way you want to say it. So. You know, because Dave Allen can fight. I've seen him in here sparring everybody. Richard Towers, you know, other people he's sparred. Like I say, you've never really seen the best of Dave Allen, I don't think. And we're probably not liable to. But it'll be an interesting fight. I see Johnny Fisher's out in Fortaventura, training in Kell Brook's favourite training place in Fortaventura, Bailey's gym, which used to be the Ingle gym in Fortaventura, but Adam Bailey. He's out there. He's keeping that gym going. It's had some great success stories over the years. People going out there and training. It's had everybody. Billy Joe Saunders, Kell, Brook, obviously Johnny Fisher. We've had John Ryder out there. Loads of kids. It's a great gym. So if you ever get the chance to go out to Kell to the Fust in Fortaventura, there's a fantastic gym out there. Bailey's gym. And got great facilities, fantastic weather. That's where Kell trained for the Amir Khan fight, a lot of his other fights as well, Golovkin. It's a great place. It's quiet, it's hot, and you can get your head down and get some good work done. So, you know, Johnny Fisher might come back a different kind of man after being out there for a couple of weeks. I see he's out there with Mark Tibbs, his long-term trainer, so it should be an interesting fight.
If he was going to edge it, obviously, I think most people agree that Dave probably won at least 4 of the rounds, and then there's one debatable round, and then he also had the knockdown as well. So a fight that was kind of 50-50 in Johnny started early, fast, won a lot of the early rounds, and Dave came into the fight and, in his words, old manned him. I don't know if it's a 10-rounder or a 12-rounder, because I'm sure that'll make a difference as well in the fight, but if you're sticking your neck on the line, Dave's basically said this is his do-or-die type fight. Does he have that extra to make it more convincing?
I think if I had to stick my neck on the line, I'd have to say Johnny Fisher, just for being younger and less worn. He's not as good a boxer as Dave, but he's probably just a bit younger and a bit more ambition. And Dave's been there and done it, and that's, you know, counts for a lot when you're young, having that ambition, and that you to prove people wrong. Whereas, you know, Dave's been there and bought the T-shirt, hasn't he? So that's, I think, when it comes down to the trenches, I think the will to win and to move on is all with Johnny Fisher. So if I had to, you know, make a bet on it, I think that Johnny would probably edge it.
On points, knockout?
Probably on points, because Dave's tough, innit? He very, very rarely gets stopped.
Fair play. And then the next thing I want to talk about is we did a really good review of the Eubank Jr BENN fight. If you haven't seen it, watch the previous episode.
Did I get that one right?
Yeah, you picked Eubank to win on points, but I mean the post-fight review that we did, we went really in detail about weight making, etc. And if you read the comments, it's probably been one of the best received podcasts we've done in the entire series, I'd say. So if anybody wants to see that, it's still up there on the page on the YouTube channel. It's a really good breakdown of weight making and what both fighters might have gone through going into that fight. But now that the fight's done, Dom, the big talking point is the rematch and the rehydration clause. We've seen from Conor Benn's team, you know, Eddie Hearn's come out and said the contract they've signed is it's the same terms for the rematch, and Chris Eubank's side is saying there were some things that weren't met, and because of that, they are looking to get that rehydration clause took out the contract. So, what do you think should be done here? Like, he was quite vocal about, you know, what Chris may have gone through making the weight for that fight. Do you think it's safe to make him hit another rehydration clause?
Well, to say that he checked himself into hospital afterwards, obviously not. And I think, you know, there's got to be an investigation by the Board of Control over that practice, because obviously it was very well documented online with Chris Eubank making the weight and drying himself out. And just imagine, you know, if something had gone fatally wrong, you know, what would be the outcry from that? And then people are wanting him to do it again. It's like, to be honest,
obviously, Conor's argument is he's the bigger guy.
Yeah, but it don't matter, because, like we said before, he might be the bigger guy, but even if he was allowed to be the bigger guy by allowing more time to rehydrate, it can also work against you in the sense that it won't actually make Eubank into a big, powerful monster. It'll just make him normal. And his normal will still be something that Conor Benn can deal with looking at that last performance. And there's not going to be no danger to him. It's not going to make him a 10 times stronger person. It'll just make him less vulnerable. That's what it is. And that's what you've got to look at. You know, they're talking about Conor Benn's safety because Eubank's going to come in bigger if there's no rehydration clause. And that's you know, dangerous to Conor Benn being the smaller man. But what about the other way? You know, weakening a bigger guy like that. You see, when you're not rehydrating properly. See, Conor Benn going into that fight, he's properly rehydrated. He's got fluid around his brain. You know, whereas Eubank hasn't. So the safe way to be is just to allow him. Eubank can only rehydrate to a certain amount. Anyway, it might only be. It's what it is that they shouldn't actually have it for 10 o'clock in the morning. They shouldn't even have that. They should just say that you can put weight on them. And Eubank probably won't put on more than 14 pounds. By the time Eubank got in the ring that night, he will have gained, say he woke up that morning 10 pounds heavier. By the end of the day, he might have been 16 pounds heavier altogether. So he's gone in bigger anyway, but the window for him to rehydrate properly is within the first 24 hours, so to speak, from the weigh-in. That's the crucial time. That's the health time to make him healthy. So what they're doing is they're restricting him to healthily rehydrate. Do you understand? So if somebody to check Eubank's weight when he got in the ring, say he was 16 pounds heavier, he's already going into the ring 16 pounds heavier. So he's got that advantage. But he didn't have that advantage, did he? Because it didn't really work. He was still getting wobbled. He still looked a bit fragile, even though he could have been 16 to 18 pounds heavier. It's that time that they're allowing him. So really, they should just scrap that. And the board should actually block that fight. If there is a clause in that contract, they should block it and not allow it, because it's going to be blood on their hands. And then people are going to be, oh, why did that happen? Well, it happened because people like Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn are insisting on it. And it's not really an advantage to Chris Eubank at his age. Do you understand? It could end up fatal, that situation.
Okay, moving on, we're going to talk about the weekend's boxing, but before I do, I need to let everyone know that on Friday the 23rd of May, the Ingle Gym amateurs are back out in action again at the Brinsworth Social Club, different venue from last time. Tickets are £15 on the door. Get yourself down there. You've got some really good fighters coming through the gym, the next generation that your nephew Luca's training. So yeah, they're likely to see you pop up, Dom.
Yeah, it's always the amateur shows are always interesting. You get some, that's where it all starts. That's where Nas started, Kell, Brook, Kid Galahad, all the fighters, Johnny Nelson, they all started on club shows. It's where you get, your grounding, your basic stuff, and the taste to follow it on. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of great amateurs coming through at the minute, in the UK, even at the top level, which means that, it's not going to cross over into the pros, and we're not going to have the great fighters that we've had. And it seems to be that the pool of talent is dwindling in the UK. So it does make me wonder what's going to be happening in the next 5 to 10 years with UK boxing, to be honest. So we have to support the amateurs, keep them going. I mean, we've always had a good amateur club. It's always been piked, and whether they, change into professionals, who knows? But at the minute, it keeps them off the street. It keeps them disciplined, and it gives them something to do in the evening instead of being on computer games or causing aggro on the streets.
100% agree with that. So yeah, just to reiterate, it's at the Brinsworth Social Club, which is in Brinsworth, South Yorkshire. £15 tickets. Get yourself down there. You can buy the tickets on the door on the day, and it should be a good night of boxing. And then the last bit of stuff we want to talk about is that the weekend's boxing. Obviously, we have that show in New York. What did you make of that as a spectacle? Like, how incredible did that look? Turki Al-Sheikh said he was going to I can't say the word now, revisualize. Oh, what's the word?
Revisualize,
no,
revolutionize.
That's the word I was looking for. That's what he's going to do to boxing, and what a bloody mad event he put on in New York Times Square on the streets.
Yeah, it was good, but it was a great. He set it all up, but for me, it wasn't the spectacle it should have been. They didn't perform as they should have done.
Well, we're going to talk about the performances, but I thought I'd kind of just highlight how.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, in Times Square, ideal. That's where they have the New Year's celebrations. It's absolutely rammed. I've been there. That's where we went for the Golovkin and Kell Brook press conference. We had photos in Times Square. It's a great place, central, iconic, and what a place to put on a show. But yeah, he's delivering the venues and the, setting the scene. So it's down to the fighters.
There you go. And then it was down to the fighters. I think in most people's views, the only fighter that came out looking good was Teofimo Lopez. He beat the previously undefeated Barboza. He beat him on points. And then we had Devin Haney, Ramirez, and we had Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero. And from what I've seen, I think the Haney and Garcia's fights had the least amount of punches. They entered the top 5 for the least amount of punches thrown in a fight. And the question I'm going to ask you is, because there's no point reviewing the fights because there isn't a lot to talk about, but that mindset of not letting your hands go. And I've seen people saying that Haney did that because he was dropped a few times by Ryan Garcia. So he's gone in there with war wounds psychologically that may have affected him. And Ryan Garcia, people are saying he got dropped early and that may have changed his whole game plan going into the fight. Does that actually happen, Dom?
Yeah, when fighters are flying high and they're full of themselves, the confidence, and they start believing they can walk on water, or as my dad would say, they think the chocolate and they can eat themselves. When you get a reality check like getting dropped a few times, it does change the whole confidence thing. I've seen fighters being ruined overnight by getting dropped, when they've previously not been dropped. And it does. Sometimes it takes them. Sometimes they don't recover from that, from a bad knockout or getting dropped, or it takes quite a while to come back from it. And it just shows, I think, with Garcia and the other fella Haney. For me, although they can fight, they're in the period of social media, aren't they, where everything's on the gram. They're not old school, and they've got people blowing smoke up their arse all the time, telling them how great they are. But, when reality strikes and they realise they're not immortal, it changes the mindset completely. And I think that was a reflection in the fights in Times Square, that they both looked a bit shell-shocked and a bit gun-shy, and it'll probably take a couple of fights for them to get over that. So yeah, it's interesting, the mindset of fighters. But you go back to the old school. I saw an interview with Oscar De La Hoya, and he was right in what he was saying. When they went out to fight, and kill Oscar De La Hoya. They left everything in the ring. You never saw Oscar De La Hoya in a dull fight. You could say that. I think the worst one for him was when he got beat by Bernard Hopkins. I got hit with a body shot. But apart from that, obviously a bigger guy, but apart from that, every time De La Hoya had a fight, it was always a fight. You could always guarantee a cracking fight. And the same can't be said of Garcia and Haney.
Well, I was looking into this theory of fighters basically getting gun shy, having that psychological issue going into a fight after getting dropped, etc. But I was researching this. Amir Khan's probably the best example I could think of. So when he fought Canelo, the much bigger guy, much bigger puncher, and he went into that fight having been dropped numerous times in his career and had 2 knockout losses on his career prior to fighting Canelo. In the 6 rounds that fight went, he threw more punches in the 6 rounds that Ryan Garcia, David Haney, and William Skull, the guy that was fighting Canelo at his natural weight, did. So I suppose that's a bit of praise in Amir Khan, even though...
Well, I'll tell you why that is.
Go on.
What's the difference in age between Garcia, Haney and Amir Khan? Different era.
No, but they were about the same sort of age that Amir Khan was fighting Canelo.
Different era though. Khan's old. You see, he might have been, but Khan comes... I spoke to Amir Khan, it's funny, because he phoned me the other day. What we were talking about? Oh, we were talking about an interview I did. And I was talking to him about the fights he had. And, sometimes he got knocked out bad, and we were talking about the first time he ever got knocked out, because we supplied the sparring partners, Lee Noble and Tyan Booth, went to spar him for the first fight he got stopped. Who was it?
Bredis Prescott.
Bredis Prescott. And I said to him, nobody thought you were going to come back from that because it was a bad knockout. And what did he do? He became world champion. And then he did it again in his career. He went along, then he got knocked out by Danny Garcia. So he comes from that old school where they're prepared to fight. So it's a different breed to the Haneys and the Ryan Garcias. It's different mindset. So, obviously Amir Khan came through a lot of hard fights and carried on doing it because that's what you did. That was a mentality. But the mentality's changed now. It's almost like they want to get in, do all the fancy stuff and whoa, don't hit me. I'm not here to get hit. I'm here to hit you and look good. I'm not here to get into the trenches. So, the fight really when Garcia and Haney were in the trenches when they fought each other. Obviously, Garcia came out on top. He failed the drug test. Whether that had anything to do with it, I don't know. But Haney's bubble was definitely burst from that point. So, you got fair play to Amir Khan. He's beating with some big punches. Been knocked out a few times and came through it, didn't he? And even with Kell at the end, again.
That's what I mean. Even with Kell, he was exchanging with Kell.
Yeah.
So if anyone's going to be battle scarred, mental scarred, you would think a guy like him, especially when people have ridiculed him for that. But I suppose it shows the kind of
it's meant what you meant your mentality as well.
He must be mentally very strong to that.
It's either that or he's just...
You don't give a shit.
Or you could say that he's a bit thick to that kind of thing. Whoa, I just want to have a fight. It's like, we're not here. I was talking to a boxer the other week, you were there, and he said, I'm very intelligent. And I said, well, you don't have to be intelligent in boxing. You just have to be able to fight. We're not interested in whether you're intelligent. We just want to see you fight. So somebody else can be intelligent for your business side.
Yeah.
And if you start boxing intelligent, 100% by the time you finished it, you're not, because you're all going to suffer some damage to your brain. It's a fight. You can't get punched around the head and not have any consequences, but that's another story. But yeah, fair play when you look back over time, and then you look back before Amir Khan's time to fighters before that.
They did the same. They just came out.
Just kind of fight because you had to, because there was an incentive. You had to keep winning. If you didn't win, you didn't get paid. And that's what's happening now, is that they're getting this ridiculous money, and they don't want to earn it. They think they're entitled to it. Whereas, back in the day, your purse is depending on what your draw and your attraction was, how many bums you could put on seats, how much pay-per-view you did. You got paid on your performance, so to speak, really. So it's going to be interesting how this is all going to work out with, to keep chucking money at them, whether he's going to start scaling it down and say, look, I'm paying you to have a fight. You're not having a fight. Canelo's fight was disappointing, to be honest. Just plodded after the guy. So, You know, let's see.
I think the line you just said there, fighters, obviously not just Amir. I'm thinking Enzo McInerney is another good example. Kell, Brook himself after his broken eye socket. Just recent examples I can think of where the whole theory of mental scars going into a fight, them guys didn't give a shit. They just like said, right, like you said, they earn it. So every fight they wanted to go in there, not just take the money, but earn it. Because I think Canelo was Amir's highest payday.
Yeah.
He could have just stayed on the back foot, not engaged.
Yeah.
But he actually went there to win. So
yeah, he did.
It's the example I wanted to give. I think sometimes fans don't appreciate the fighters that are just gone.
I think with fighters, if you know fighters like to Kell, but maybe even Amir Khan, is that, you know, they go to dark places and it's about the self and what they think about the self and the, you know, how they view the self as not just somebody there who's wants to get money. They're all personas built around being who they are, the fighter. And I don't think that matters. It's almost like the social media and the fame aspect is more important than, you know, I'm going to go and have a fight with anybody. I'm here to fight and show people how tough and strong I am. You know, that's the old school mentality. You know, we'll fight you anywhere. Don't matter what it is. It's all about the pride and the winning. The money's just something what comes after. But now it can be all about the money and the fame and the fortune. But you don't really want to get into the trenches.
Definitely. And just, I'm going to name drop again, you know, fans who have seen the series we've got on our YouTube channel called Boxing Kings, which we speak to and go into the lives of retired boxers. We did episode 1 on Bernard Hopkins, very well received. Episode 2 was Miguel Cotto, which is even more well received. And episode 3, which I've just finished filming, was an Amir Khan, which will be out in the next 2-3 weeks. So keep an eye out for that. It's a real fascinating insight into his life now post-retirement in Dubai, and we did a really compelling interview, stuff that he's never spoken about before, so that'll be out soon, so keep an eye out for that. And then going back to these guys, Garcia, Haney, William Skull, who was Canelo's opponent, who people said he just ran around the ring and threw the odd jab. What does that kind of make of boxing? You've got Turkey who's putting on these mad events, like the production value in Riyadh for that Canelo fight is incredible. The biggest screen I've ever seen for the ring walks. And then the guys come out, the ring walk is at 6 a.m. Saudi time, so it could get the US pay-per-view in. He comes out and just runs around the ring. I think Canelo told me, Skull told him at the end of the fight that he froze because it's the first time he's been on that stage.
Yeah, listen, I don't think so. It's like he probably froze because he was fighting Canelo, and that's the thing. That, you know, with fighters like Canelo, really, everybody's wanting him to fight. And would they want him to fight the other guy?
I think his next fight is going to be Crawford.
Yeah, it's going to be Crawford, isn't it? But who do they want him to fight?
Who, Canelo?
Yeah.
Potentially down the line, there's Eubank Jr, Hamza Shiraz for his UK fight, because he's trying to get a fight in the UK. I'd suspect, based on what Chris has done recently. Benavidez, yeah.
That's the fight.
He doesn't want that, though.
No, he doesn't. Of course he doesn't. But that's the fight, realistically,
yeah,
that Canelo should be taking. Do you understand? That's the fight he should be taking. But it's not. That's a risky fight compared to everything else. So, you know, if Canelo really got anything about him, he'd be fighting the people who are challenging him, like that Benavidez, who can fight. But Canelo's got into that situation now where he's had the hard fights with Golovkin, and they were tear-ups. He's had some difficult fights. But now he's kind of cruising and kind of drifting. He's probably going to be drifting into his retirement soon, picking his fights, easy enough fights. And, you know, Turk's going to pain him. But, like I say, are we going to get the fights or the action that you want? You know, Canelo could have probably gone in there and jumped on Skull and done him in 4 or 5 rounds, but he was quite happy to plod, and that's what's a bit concerning, really.
Definitely. So if you're the guy funding this, you've put on this mad event in Times Square, then you've done it in a way where you want to make a global impact on boxing. So 24 hours later, he's got an event on in Riyadh with Canelo, the face of boxing, they call him, fighting. And all 3-4 fights, the fighters refuse to let their hands go. If you're the man himself, Turkey, how would you kind of deal with that now? What would you do?
Well, I saw I didn't see an interview with Eddie. I saw a quote with Eddie when he was talking about it's going to take more than Turkey and Dana White to take over boxing. And he's right in a way, because even though you've got all the money and you might have got a formula for UFC, how it works, you've got to understand boxers' mindset. And there's nobody better understands boxers' mindset than Frank Warren, because he's been in this game for a long, long time. Eddie's been in the game, well, not Eddie, but his dad and Eddie together have been in the game quite a long time. And you have to know with the people that you deal with, and boxers have got a different mindset, I think, to UFC fighters. So you've got to understand them to get the best out of them. And, you know, Turkey's done 2 shows. He's done the New York. He's done the one in Riyadh. And 2 big, you know, showcases, what actually didn't turn out to be showcases. So he's going to have a serious think about how to redo that to get the best out of the fighters that he's putting on, because it's like, it'd be like getting, you know, 2 Premier League teams, the top 2 Premier League teams, and both playing it safe. Or whether it's Liverpool, or is it with Liverpool and
I don't know.
Who's the top of the Premier League, Luca? Right, so imagine Liverpool and Arsenal playing in a cup final and they just play it safe and it ends in a 0-0 draw. Everybody's going to be pissed off, aren't they? And that's what it's getting to. So you've got to have some ambition. And I suppose the only way to do that is to change the payment schedule. You know, stop paying these people if they're not going to perform. Because if Canelo's going to box and, you know, now he's got X amount of money, say he got 20 million for that fight or whatever he got. Well, if somebody says, well, we're not going to pay you that money because you're not excited enough or you're not putting bums on seats, we're going to pay you $1 million, he might not box. Do you understand? So if he don't box, well, that's him finished. Get some more exciting fighters who are prepared to fight, because that's taking the piss, really, taking all that money and not even getting out of first gear. It's not good for boxing, is it?
It's not, especially when you're staying up till 6 a.m. To watch the whole fight. But I think Canelo's argument is Skull, who's got incredible Cuban footwork. He just never engaged, never stayed.
Yeah, maybe he did, but Canelo's a top tier fighter, levels above Skull, so he should have been able to close him down and finish him off if he wanted to. You know, that's not an excuse. Oh, I can't fight because he ran off.
Do you think the other aspect may have been, if he does that, he leaves himself slightly open? He's got the Crawford fight, which is already lined up.
Yeah, but but the thing is, there's no possibility of that Skull beating Canelo. Do you know what I mean?
Does it make a difference, Dom? Because all them fights I've talked about, all of them got something lined up. They're going to get paid a lot more money. Haney was supposed to fight Garcia in a rematch for a lot more money. So Garcia.
Well, let's just say how much did Canelo get for that last fight?
Well, whatever he's got paid, I assume he'd be getting paid double to fight Crawford.
Right.
So he knows the next fight's bigger.
Right.
So is that going to affect their mindset going into the fight?
Well, let's just say he got 10 million for Skull, and he's getting 20 million for Crawford. Yeah. Crawford's going to be an harder fight than Skull. You understand? It's going to be an harder fight.
You're not going to risk losing that fight, are you?
Well, the thing is, then don't box Skull, then just box Crawford for the 20 million.
Maybe that's what they've negotiated.
Well, maybe so, but it's just a pointless. It's like it's a gimme fight, and the thing is, then it kind of ruins the credibility, doesn't it, of the next fight, because it's not a builder for the next fight. It's like, well, everybody's thinking now, will Canelo perform in this next fight?
Do you think they should add knockout bonuses or fight bonuses?
Not really.
They do that in UFC.
They've just they've changed up the pay. Realistically, before, I remember Bob Arum, he parted ways with Crawford because Crawford wanted more money, and I think Bob Arum was more saying he's not exciting enough to put bums on seats, which it might be true. So he let him go, or they parted ways. But guaranteed, if Crawford had been a big seller or attractive or, you know, a big money spinner, then I think Bob Arum would have done everything to keep him on board. So, but then you've got somebody who's paying him money, like not really bothered about what he's bringing in, because, well, I'll just give you this amount of money to do it. He can't gauge what his pull is by the audience. What's the point of having a fight if nobody's bothered about watching it? Do you understand? And you gauge the watchability of fights by how many tickets, how many pay-per-views you do. That's how you gauge how good, how attractive a fighter is. Not by somebody saying, well, I'll give you 10 million out of his, whatever the fund is for that boxing. It's not coming from the fans. It's not coming from the TV. It's like, well, we'll give you that. So it's kind of a false economy, innit? It's like a false... it's a false thing, because it's not his draw, is it? It's not his attraction. He's not really attracting the fans.
Indeed. Let's move on. Final thing I want to speak to you about. Your ex-fighter Leigh Wood is back in action again this week I think you might be able to correct me. I think he may have worked with all the promoters now. He's obviously left Eddie Hearn, and he's gone to Frank Warren. Makes his Frank Warren Queensberry debut this weekend in a tough fight. I think he just wanted big fights in his fight. Anthony Cacace, really good Irish fighter with 23 wins and 8 knockouts, and his only loss has come to Martin J. Ward. 7-8 years ago that happened, but ever since then he's been on a great run. Recently beat Cordina, Josh Warrington, and Leigh Wood. Is coming on the back end of beating Josh Warrington and Lara, great performance, and Michael Conlon as well. What do you think happens? I think Leigh's been out of the ring for a while as well.
About a year and a half.
Yeah, a long time since I think he's been busy trying to just get the right fight for the right dough.
Well, look at this situation. Leigh Wood's a good fighter. He's had a good few years. Last couple of fights, he's made some money, some good wins, good performances. Cacace obviously beat Cordina about this time last year, weren't it?
Yeah, Cordina's defence, he was weight drained. He's now.
Yeah, he looked terrible in that fight. To be honest, he did look terrible. Cacace came through, and I think all things being even, I think Leigh Wood beat Cacace, but I think Leigh Wood's had too much inactivity and trying to organise a fight, and he's obviously left Eddie because Eddie hasn't given the fights he wants or can't arrange him a fight. Maybe lost interest in Leigh Wood. I'm not sure whether Leigh Wood wanted more money or Eddie it won't even be the case that Leigh Wood wanted more money. It's probably Eddie offering him less. And I can't see Leigh Wood, being constantly training while he's had this time out, because fighters don't. There's very few fighters when they've had that amount of time out where they're constantly training. Examples like Kell, Brook, if he had it when he got beat by Crawford. He didn't train for, from then to fight Amir Khan. He had time out, a lot of time out, to be honest. So I would imagine Leigh Wood's the same. I don't think Leigh Wood will have been ticking over in the gym. He probably at some point even thought, oh, sod this. After fights I've had, the entertainment I've provided, which they were exciting fights. Why aren't I getting the fights? I should be, because he was excited. He has been excited in his last few fights. So when you've got a promoter then who's not backing you up or getting you the fights, it probably is, pissed him off a bit. So he might have been sat about, he might have been out, going on holiday, enjoying himself and thinking nothing's going to come of it, and then this opportunity's arose. So I think he's up against that. So I think his inactivity is going to play a part in this fight. And Cacace's been quite active. So, I hope Leigh Wood wins. But I've just got a feeling that Cacace, because he's been...
Well, Cacace's not fought since September last year.
Yeah, but...
So he's had like 7-8 months as well.
Yeah, maybe he has, but he's still less, than Leigh Wood. So, and like I say, I would think that with Cacace being where he is, it's going to motivate him more to keep on it. There's always going to be a fight. So I just think that, Cacace's, the activities with him, the momentum's with him, and he's performed well in his last few fights. I think he might just edge it. But, don't write Leigh Wood off, because, he's always full of surprises, isn't he?
So what's your ultimate prediction?
I think probably Cacace being the home fighter as well. He's been with Frank. I know Leigh Wood.
It's in Nottingham, the show.
It doesn't matter. Well, it will be, because Leigh Wood sells big. He probably sells bigger. Leigh Wood sells bigger in Nottingham than Cacace does in his hometown or Ireland, wherever it is. So
points, knockout. What you saying?
I think maybe Cacace on points.
Okay, so we'll stick with that.
Could even be a split decision, that fight.
Okay. Let's see what happens. I'll tell you a funny story about Cacace. I've just remembered. I've shared it with him a few times. Every time I see him, I remind him about it. He was supposed to fight in Wembley a year ago, and his fight got called off on the day of the weigh-in. I don't know, I can't remember what happened, but I didn't know it got called off. So we left, the fighters had done the weigh-in, and I'm just walking up Wembley, where the stadium is, and there's a bar there, and I see Cacace drinking a pint. And I looked at him thinking... That's
strange behaviour before a fight.
No, yeah, just after. I'm thinking, he's made weight, and what the first thing he's doing is drinking a pint. Like, what the fucking hell is all this about? So I went up to him and I said, I've never seen that before. Like, is that actually like alcohol you're drinking? He goes, yeah. I'm thinking, I've never seen a fighter drink a pint before a day before a fight. Like, do you always do this? He goes, my fight's off. I didn't even know. So it was quite a funny, awkward situation. But he goes, oh shit, sorry, I didn't even know about that. But yeah, that was that. Quick minute on this Kell Brook. I spoke to Team Eubank. Apparently, they've got Kell Brook on their list of fighters they want. So after Conor Benn, I think the rematch is going to happen next, but they've got a window before they've got to wait for a potential big fight. They want to fit Kell Brook into that potential end of this year.
Sorry, tell me. So Eubank's going to fight Ben next.
I think that's pretty much what's going to happen because it's the biggest money fight out there for both of them, and it's contractually down. So that'll probably happen September time. End of the year, they've got a list probably December time, and the only British pay-per-view is potentially Kell Brook because of the previous history.
Which is funny to say he's been retired since 2022.
Yeah,
isn't it?
So, but obviously Chris had a long time on the sidelines as well, trying to get the big fight. But would you entertain that?
It's not really for me to entertain, is it? It's like I don't think Kell Brook's going to fight him. I don't think Kell's going to fight again. I think Kell likes the idea of it, but he's not. I saw him the other day. Came to the house with his new lad, and with Ebony Bridges, which was interesting. And he's talking, but he says he was talking. He was at the weekend after the fight of Eubank and BENN. And I said, what do you think? He went, well, a good fight, he says, but I think I beat them both. But he didn't say, I'm in talks or I want to do it. He seemed quite content where he was. And I don't think it's the fighting aspect of it for Kell. Because fighting's like riding a bicycle. It's what you have to do to get into that condition, to fight. And it's going to be a long, long slog for him because he's been out for a while and he's ticking over. But to be able to switch yourself off, make them sacrifices again, he's got a young kid. To make them there's more. He's 39 years old. He was 39 on the 5th of May. He's 39 years old. I think he'd still beat Conor Benn and Eubank, but it's whether he can cut himself off and go back into a camp So
we just need to make sure if he's on it, you're still confident he can do the job.
Oh, if he could train, if he could bring himself to go back into that situation again, I think he would beat them both. But it's just that's not going to be the hard bit. Having the fight with them two is not going to be the hard bit. The hard bit is having to go back in time, wind yourself back. The last time he was in camp was started in July 2021. That's nearly 4 years ago.
He's been ticking over here.
He's been ticking over, but it's a different mindset. It's, once you're out of that environment of, wanting to be the best and people challenge you and having to cut yourself off and be selfish with your time and put the people to one side who you care about, like your family and your kids. And, it's a difficult situation to do.
Well, I know you've got to go, but I'll tell you what, the bit I'd look forward to the most is the build-up, if that happens, with the press conference, because you and Eubank are going to exchange words. Senior might exchange words with you, and potentially Chris is the manager, big napper. I think the build-up would be fascinating, because I think you'll have everyone intrigued, and I'm sure you'll be on top form at the press conference.
I think what would be great for that fight is get Billy Joe Saunders in with Napper in like one of them unlicensed fights. That'd be good on undercard. Billy against him. Well, I think me and Eubank Senior just have to be a verbal sparring session, because you can never underestimate Chris Eubank Senior, because he can still have a dig, can't he? I don't think I'd be a match for him, to be honest. Verbally, I think I would. But I think physically, you never know with him. You've got to respect him and admire him, because he can have a dig. But yeah, it could be a good build-up, couldn't it? But I think Billy against that Napper would be a good thing. It'd be a good scrap, that.
Well, let's see what happens. Dominic, Ingle, thank you for another episode, and we'll catch you soon, see if your predictions come in, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you.